Hello, good evening, everyone. Hope you've had a good day. Good evening, and is it okay for me to say happy Mental Health Week? Happy Mental Health Week. Mental Health Awareness Week actually is not just Mental Health Week. Every single day should be a day when we observe or when we talk about mental well-being. It should not just be limited to 1 week or limited to 1 day or just an event that one or two people pick on, and then we'll talk about different things. This week or this year, the main focus for this year is actually on stress. Stress. Yesterday, I kind of gave a prelude about what we'll be talking about around stress. And like I did say yesterday, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them on the timeline, or feel free to drop them as we progress. Stress. So I wish I had an interactive audience. I would have loved to ask everyone what you think the definition of stress is. I suppose we all have different ways in which we describe or define what stress is. For some people, stress is when they start to get headache and they feel a bit of tiredness. For some people, stress is when they have too many things on their plate. For some people, stress is when they just can't cope. They just can't cope with too many tasks, too many assignments, too many things that they have to do. So can I ask for those who are online, what is your definition of stress? What do you think stress is? It's going to be very helpful for us to all think about it. Hello, Folakemi. Hello, everybody joining. Hello. Hi, Olayemi Oseni. Hi. Thank you for everyone joining us, marking the Mental Health Awareness Week. And as we share this video and also as we start this conversation, can I just ask if everybody had a green ribbon today? I had a green ribbon. And I had very interesting conversation at work. It was very, very interesting conversation in the kitchen, whilst making coffee, whilst making tea. And it was really around stress. How do people cope with stress? A very big question that I think is kind of individual. We all have our various coping mechanisms around stress. But let's start the conversation. What is stress? Like some of you may know, I'm actually a mental health first aid trainer. So Mental Health Federation England does conduct a course called Mental Health First Aid. So basically what they do, or what they're trying to raise awareness about, is that just like you have people who are trained to deliver first aid in case somebody goes ill, in case, in case somebody has a heart attack, in case somebody has a broken bone. How do you respond when such illnesses or such accidents happen around you? So what physical first aid will do is basically to help people into a state of recovery until the main experts come. So the same thing with mental health first aid. So mental health first aid is actually teaching people how to respond at initial occurrence of a mental health breakdown. What are the signs? How do you know somebody is nearing the tip edge? These and so many other questions is what you get trained when you attend the 2 days course on mental health first aid training. But however, we are talking about stress today, and the reason why I refer to the mental health first aid training is mainly because one of the things that we are encouraged to do is actually to engage people and ask them what their stress bucket is. I mean, what is your stress bucket? How do you know whether your stress is full or whether your stress is high? I think the starting point really would be for you to find out what stress is to you. What is stress to you? There is so much issues. There are lots of issues in the community now that is causing a lot of people to be stressed. But even then, a lot of people don't even know how to manage their stress level. And that's one of the things that we would like to talk about. How do you manage your stress level? How do you manage change? What causes stress? One of the major factors, one of the major things that cause stress, I'll just read this out because I did some bit of research before coming online. One of the major causes of stress is physical stress. So sometimes when you physically exert yourself to do things, you can be stressed. When you have late nights, following after themselves, when you binge drink, when people use illegal drug, when there's a lack of routine, when there's poor diet, or sometimes when there's illness, that can actually cause stress. Another thing that can cause stress is environmental stress. So for example, where a person has poor housing, when a person is socially isolated, when a person is unemployed, when there's a new environment and and that person is finding it very, very difficult to cope with the new environment, it can actually cause stress as well. Then another trigger for stress is actually emotional stress. This actually happens when there's a relationship breakdown, when there's peer pressure. For example, if you're in a community and community, whether directly or indirectly, they exert unnecessary influence on you, that can actually cause or trigger stress. When there's a high expression of emotions within a family home. So for example, if in a family home, there are various kind of dynamics, there are various kind of things happening, and there is a high level in which people are expressing their emotions, that can cause stress. Another thing is sometimes when people are in a situation where there's conflicting views around cultural values, when there's conflicting views around beliefs, or when a person is leaving home, or sometimes marriage causes stress. In actual fact, later this week, one of the areas that we want to talk about is marriage or relationship and stress. So relationship and stress, not just about relationship with husband, it's also relationship with children, relationship with siblings. I am aware and I know that sometimes we can have very, very tense emotional dynamics in families, and that can actually exert stress on people. There are very many other triggers for stress, very many others. But it'd be nice to hear from you what you think stress is, what causes stress. And don't forget the reason why we're doing this Facebook Live, and we're going to be having this every day for the next 5 days. Yippee! God helping me, is really to talk about the theme that we are observing this week. We are marking the Mental Health Awareness Week. Mental health is a topic that we cannot stop talking about. For a long time, we have learned how to deal with our physical bodies. We've learned how to deal with structures. We've learned how to deal with things. But a lot of us are not trained in dealing with our mental health issues. How do we cope with stress? That is the theme for this week. And like I said yesterday, we're going to be looking at various strands of stress. On Wednesday, we're going to be bringing some students on. We'll have 2 students who will be talking to us. Exams. This is exam period. Yay! For all the students in the house who are watching, big ups to you. Well done. Exam is one of the things that can bring stress. We have different things that can actually cause stress. Exams. So on Wednesday, if you have any young one, bring them round. Let's talk. Let them ask questions. If you have any questions as well that you like us to ask or you like us to deliberate on, I actually have a team of experts behind me. And when I say behind me, then I'm going to discuss them with, and then we can come on air and actually talk about those things. We'll talk about any question that you pose on. Thank you very much for those who have joined us. Share this video. Like I said, it's going to be very conversational. It's not going to be all about me. It's not going to be all about what I'm saying. It's going to be questions that you ask, and then we talk. You post your agreement or disagreement with what I say. Post it online, and then we can chat. Let's have a chat. Like the news is like you're all aware, the news is catch line, if you can use that word, is actually let's talk about mental health. We have been quiet for too long about mental illness, and we do need to break that barrier. The reason why people are so adversely affected and disproportionately accessing mental health service very late in our communities because of the lead that we have put on discussing about mental illness. There is an excessive negative stigma in our community. So when a person falls ill, mentally ill, when a person has a meltdown, when a person has issues they cannot cope with and they express their frustration in different ways, we find it very difficult in our community to cope with it. We don't know how to react. We do not know how to react. And one thing I keep saying, and that's why I talk about mental health, mental illness, is that you cannot deal with what you don't know. So if you don't know how to work with a person who is very suicidal, for example, you're going to mess it up. You could actually inadvertently push that person over to the edge. And that's why we need to know. So the NOS organization, for example, we run trainings on mental health first aid. We also will be very soon running training on suicide intervention. Suicide is a major issue that we all are aware in our community. We've kept quiet for too long about it, and people just feel that, no, with suicide, no, that doesn't happen with us. Black people will know how to deal with it, to know how to take care of it. But no, we don't. We've used the wrong coping mechanisms for a long time. Now is the time for us to use the proper, and now is the time for us to learn what the right coping mechanisms should be. Okay, thank you very much, Joshua, for your comment. You're saying that you love our concern about mental health issues, which is true. In our modern day lifestyle, it's really true. There are so many things going on in this modern life now that there's just a need for us to talk about it. Sis Grace Alexander, the CEO of Start Children Initiative, thank you very much. It says stress is inevitable in life, which is true. That's actually one side that we're going to be talking about. The fact that stress is something we cannot avoid. You cannot avoid being stressed. But how do we cope with stress? According to Grace Alexander, she says, because people go through issues, marriage, which is true, work, children, health, relationship, death, finances. However, the question is, what are the coping strategies? Management is very key. Yes, we're going to talk about the coping strategies as well, is one of the things. So please stay tuned. Stay tuned with us all throughout this week. We're going to come on live at 8 p.m. If you'd like to join this conversation, let me know. I can actually add you. And you just talk about, like I said, it's a conversation in the community. We've seen quite a lot of issues in the last few years within our community where people have not been able to cope with stress, and they've expressed their frustration of their stress level in different ways. Thank you very much, Olivia. You said, what is your stress bucket? Fantastic. What is your stress bucket? One of the things that we will be talking about when we talk about coping mechanism is the need for everybody to have what is called a stress bucket. So I'll explain to you what a stress bucket is. So if you were a psychotherapist or a psychologist, one of the things they would ask you to do is to put a bucket together, and it's not a physical bucket. It's not a physical bucket, but in your mind, or you could actually draw it out. It's about how many things do you think you can have in that bucket for your bucket to tip over. I wish I had a flip chart here. I would have just drawn it out for you, what the buckets would look like and how you can measure your stress level. But we'll talk about that sometimes this week. We'll talk about how to put the stress bucket together and how you can measure this. One thing that I'd just like to say to people as well is that when you feel too stressed, it's actually okay for you to go to your doctor and check out. There are various tools online where you can check what your stress level is. But I will still say at the end of the day, it's best. The doctors are there for a reason. It's best for you to discuss your stress level with the doctor. And stress levels can actually also be checked chemically, because what happens is that when we are stressed, our body actually produces what you call cortisol. And sometimes what cortisol does is that it releases into the bloodstream some hormones. I don't know the name. Like I always say, I'm not a medical person. I'm an advocate, and I talk about empowering ourselves, making sure that services understand where the services are. Sorry, communities understand where the services are, and the need for us to recognize that these are issues that we need to deal with in our community. So yes, doctors can actually test stress level. That was one of the questions that somebody asked earlier. They said, can doctors can they test your stress level? Not asking you questions now, but can they actually run you through a medical test where your stress level can be tested? Yes, I say yes. Your doctor can actually order what you call a cortisol test. So when you go to your doctor, it's not just okay for them to ask you questions. It's okay for you to ask them to further run what you call a cortisol test. Ask them to run a cortisol test for you. And what that test will do, it would actually help you. It would help them to determine the cortisol level in your bloodstream. They would help you to do that. Okay, and the 3 ways in which they can actually collect collect the sample. They can collect it through the blood, they can collect it through saliva or through urine. So feel free to ask your doctor to run a cortisol test for you. I'm going to go back now to what Olivia said earlier. And she said, there are a lot of issues that's causing people to be stressed. How do you manage stress? Big question. Let me throw the question open to all of us who are out there. How do we manage stress? In your personal life, when you're stressed, how do you manage stress? So if anybody is there and you want to answer, how do you manage stress? There are various ways in which people manage stress. I was speaking with my boss at work today. I actually wanted to interview him, but we were so busy and we couldn't do that. I was speaking with him today and I actually asked him, how does he manage stress? And he gave me a very simple, appeared very simple, but very, very important. He said, what he's learned to do is to categorize things and deal with things that are urgent, important, and not very important. If it is not affecting life or the quality of life, he said he's learned to drop them down. So what I will say is that we have different coping mechanisms, but we're going to talk about what coping mechanisms are during this week. We'll talk about what coping mechanisms are. So I'll just quickly write these questions down. So how do you manage stress? Good one. That's from Olivia. How do you manage stress? And then, do you even know when you're stressed? Okay, Nemo. Hi, Nemo. And Nemo says people need to be clear. We do not deal with pressures in the same way. Absolutely right. And that's why I said our coping mechanisms are going to be different from one person to the other. For some people, their coping mechanism might just be to go to the gym, and have a good workout. For some people, it might be to have a long walk. For some people, it might be to sing. For some people, it might be to go for Zumba. For some people, it might just be to do whatever. But we all need to know what our coping mechanisms are and bring them up. Thank you very much, Dami Prayers. Happy Mother's Day. Well, it was yesterday, I think. Thank you for acknowledging. Okay. Bullying and harassment in the workplace. Oh my, oh my. I could talk on that for the next 2-3 hours. But on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, please join us as I'm going to be speaking with Nemo. Nemo actually used to work in the local authority and she used to be a union rep. So she's going to be talking to us about bullying and harassment in the workplace and also stress in the workplace. I know that this is one of the major triggers for stress, especially for people who are working. How do you manage stress at work? Apart from learning, which Nemo will be telling us tomorrow, ways in which you can challenge, ways in which you can tackle. I don't want to use the word tackle because it sounds a bit negative, but ways in which you can engage your employers or your management into dealing with bullying, harassment, or when the workload is too high at work. Or sometimes when you're going through changes, especially with those who work in the public sector where at the moment, restructure is almost a permanent song that we all hear. There's restructure going on almost every 6 months. You see a service is restructured today, 6 months down the line, they're being restructured again. Yes, another one, fantastic. Thank you for this, Olivia. Olivia says racial discrimination in accessing services. That can cause stress. Believe you me, I know that can cause stress. It's the fact that you are being sidestepped, you're being overlooked, especially when you're at work or when you want to access a service and somebody looks at you and feels that, okay, this is not an area for you. This is something that you're not eligible for. That can actually cause stress. So we're still talking about stress today. And I'm just going to pause and remind us the reason why we're doing this Facebook Live. And we are doing this because we are marking the Mental Health Awareness Week, which runs from the 14th to the 18th. So from Monday till Friday, we're going to be coming on air at 8 o'clock every day, talking about the theme for this year, which is on stress. Are you coping? Stress, are you coping? And this is from Olufunke Olunloyo. Thank you very much for this. He said, anything that causes a push or pressure could be a stressor. Absolutely. And like Nemo rightly said earlier, it's an individual thing. So for me, I may be able to run 6 miles without stopping. For some other people, it may just be only 1 mile that they can run and they have to stop. So it's very, very individual. Our stressors are very, very individual. There's an excessive mental health stigma in our communities. We do not know how to react, which is true. One thing that I know in our community is that we react based on the knowledge that we have. So a lot of people react wrongly because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't understand what the various presentations of the mental illnesses are. So if a person is psychotic, what does it mean? If a person has bipolar, what does it mean? If a person has borderline personality disorder, what does it mean? Of course, we're going to bring the expert in later, the clinicians. They will come in and talk to us. We've had some one or few instances where we brought them on. We're going to be having a seminar very soon, a conference very soon, where we'll be talking about immigration and psychosis. Immigration and psychosis. That is one big major issue that I know is adversely affecting the immigrant community in UK, and not just in UK, to be honest with you, in most countries. So in America at the moment, there's a major pressure being drawn by Donald Trump. God bless his soul. I don't want to say something else. God bless him. Where he's been talking about Americans for America for Americans. There's been a lot of pressure on deporting people who they feel are illegal, people who they feel should not be in the country. There's been a lot of pressure around that. So I'm just going to go back to what Olivia said earlier. Yes, we do not know how to deal with mental health stigma in our communities. We don't know how to react. Many people don't know how to work with people that are suicidal. Absolutely. To be honest with you, I need to put a caveat out here. Working with people who are suicidal is something that is very specialist. It's not something that everybody can do because there are certain words and certain triggers that people are trained to look out for. For example, I'm a suicide interventionist. I'm trained for it. I paid to go to learn how to intervene if a person is suicidal. It's a 4-day course, and it's not something that anyone can just pick up. So there's a need to actually train people to become suicide interventionists as well in our community. So it's not just about mental health first aid, it's also about suicide intervention, which I think is very key. We need to be trained to know how to deal with these things. Coming on air and talking about it for 15, 20 minutes is not enough. It's, when I run the training, when I run the mental health first aid training, it's 2 full days from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for 2 days. And we'll be talking about different aspects of mental health, mental well-being, and mental illness. We'll be talking about that. Thank you, Olivia, for mentioning this. Yes, we run training on mental health first aid. So if you're interested, please inbox myself, inbox Honorable Bola Olivia Joseph. She's the deputy chair of the news organization. Thank you very much, Pastor Shola Fabumi from USA. Thank you for watching. Thank you for acknowledging the job that we're doing. The job is actually across board. And the power of social media is the fact that I'm sitting here in my little kitchen in UK, and people from all over the world are joining from, there's my friend, Nurulani. I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing your name wrongly. But my friend is joining all the way from from Canada. She's joining all the way from Canada. So thank you for the fact that this conversation spans across board. And this is specific with the ethnic minority communities where we are, specifically within the immigrant community. Our cultures are very similar. So the Asian culture is very similar to the African culture in our values and the things we place values on. The fact that family is important. The fact that there's some things you should not talk about in your external community. The fact that you need to keep a lead on things. The fact that it's a shame. Don't talk about it. So these things runs across. But unfortunately, the negative impact is massive in our community. And that's why I say, let's talk about mental health. I'm going to just quickly read what Neru's written here. She said, this is a very important topic. Yes, it is. There's so many barriers towards dealing with mental illness. You know what? I actually like to call it what it is. Mental health is a state that we all have. So everybody has mental health. So whether young, whether old, everybody has mental health. But however, our mental health can be negatively impacted. And that's when you say somebody has mental illness. So yes, there's so many barriers towards dealing with mental health. Oftentimes, physical health is taking priority over everything else because it's something we can see with our physical eyes, which is very true. And thank you, Nuru. You know, we're together at UN. We're together in the UN just a few weeks back. And one of the things that the news raised in Geneva during the conference, during the World Association for Sustainable Development Conference, was the need for mental health to have a prominent role within the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So at the moment, mental health stays under Goal 3. And Goal 3 is more about just well-being. Well-being, unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of attention has been given to physical well-being. And yes, things have been discussed about mental well-being, but it's not as much. And we're making a push and asking that there's a need to actually give more prominence, more attention, more importance to mental well-being, to mental health especially. Yeah. Nemo, tomorrow we're going to talk about what is good and what is bad stress. What is good and what is bad stress? Thank you very much, Glam, Adequito, for joining. Badly managed stress could lead to a breakdown. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is why there is a need for us to have what we call what your stressors are. One of the things that I personally do from time to time is that I like to journal. I write things down. And our stressors actually change from situations or circumstances to the other. So for example, at the moment, my stressor could be too much workload at work. My stressor could be a relationship breakdown with my siblings or with my children. My stressor could be anything. But it's about recognizing that for each situation and each time we have in our life, especially when we're going through change, we need to take a step back. And that's one of the things that I talk about with dealing with our mind. So we talk about the news, we talk about our mind. Our mind is very, very important. For a long time, we have not concentrated or we have not given enough significance to the issues of the mind, to how we cope with our mind. So most of the time, we'll think about our physical health. We'll think about our spiritual health for those who have faith. But we've left our mind, the management of our mind, we've left it to the side. We need to actually put something in place to recognizing what our stressor levels are. So write them down. So for example, women who are in their late 40s into the early 50s, you're going through menopause. You need to realize that menopause will be one of the things that could tip you over. So you find out that you're very snappy. You get angry very quickly. You're not able to absorb most of the stress that you used to absorb before. You need to understand where you are at in your life. If you don't understand that, you find yourself dealing with other issues, whereas it's because of the main cause, which is premenopause signs or premenopause issue that the person could be going through. So yes, you're very right, Glam. Badly managed stress could lead to a breakdown. If you do not recognize and manage the stress, it can lead to a mental health breakdown where it causes a lot of things. And one of the things that I know that clinicians talk about, and I'm aware of as well as a mental health advocate and someone who has supported a lot of people in the community around mental health issues, is the fact that mental well-being is a spectrum. I like to I'm a very pictorial person. I think in pictures a lot. Mental health is a spectrum. So you have low, or mental illness, it's a spectrum. So you have low, you have medium, and you have the high. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, when we're low, and where the stresses come and we don't manage it well, it can tip to medium. When the stress comes when we're medium and we don't manage it well, it can tip to high. And that is why I agree totally with what Glam said there. If you do not manage your stress well, it can tip you over. It can actually lead to a mental illness diagnosis. Whereas if those things have been dealt with when they are in the low spectrum. The person could just be okay and get back to normal. Okay, thank you very much, Eze. Prince Eze says here, stress like most things is good. Well, yeah, there are some good stress. I like, for example, when I'm going out on speaking engagement, I like to feel the adrenaline a bit. I like to feel the what's the word? I like to feel the stage fright a bit. I like to feel that I still need to do more. There's some stresses that are right. There's some stresses that are very, very positive. If I was sitting for example, I'd like to feel some positive stress. And that would actually drive me to study more. But it's about coping. It's about knowing what that bucket is and when that bucket could tip over. Stress, like most things, is good, but it has to be at appropriate and controllable level. Absolutely. It's got to be controlled. So we go back to what Nemo said here. Stress is not a mental illness. Absolutely, I agree with you. We need to stress that very, very clearly, that stress is not mental illness. We are all allowed to have stress, and stress or fear is actually nature's way in helping us to cope with difficult circumstances. But when you do not know how to manage your stress, the difficult circumstances can actually overshadow a person. So, Glam says here, living your life to please the dictates of others, cultural beliefs will lock you up in a mental health prison. Absolutely. Free yourself and live like me. Okay, I'm going to try and see how you live. But the important thing, like you rightly said, is, you know what? When our expectations are too high, when our expectations of others are too high, and when we sit our lives in the picture of other people's expectation, believe you me, you will be stressed. We would all be stressed. So you know what? It's good to have our expectation. And one of the things that I have said before is women who are alpha types is one of the things we'll talk about later this week. So stay tuned to us, or stay tuned with us. We're going to be talking about personality types, and that actually influences your stress level, your personality type. So alpha male, alpha female are people who are very highly driven, very, very highly driven. And they set their expectations very, very high. There are people who usually continue to walk around with very high stress level, and they don't know they're stressed. And that's why I say from time to time, we need to check ourselves. We need to find out, what is my stress level? And you know what? Worst case scenario, go to your doctor and say, I would like to have a cortisol test. So they'll take the sample in 3 ways. So they'll take the sample either through urine, through blood, or through saliva. You have every right to ask for a cortisol test, just for you to know, because, you know, some people just go on, especially alpha female, alpha male. They just go on, they just go on, they just go on, they just go on, they just go on until they reach a brink. And sometimes they don't even know that they've reached a brink, because they're not self-aware, because they think it's because I'm a strong person, I can go on, I can cope with it. And it's not just about that. Okay, thank you very much. Jide Onosoya, thank you. You sleep a lot. That's fantastic. That's a coping mechanism. But the truth is, at the end of that sleep, though, you realize you're going to come back to that issue. It's good to sleep because it takes off it helps the adrenaline to kind of wear off a little bit. It helps it to wear off a little bit. And then another coping mechanism you have, which is very good. I drive. That's one thing I love to do as well. I love to drive when I'm stressed. I just get onto the motorway and I just drive. And I just drive and sit down somewhere and then just do a U-turn and I come back home. So you need to know what your stressors are and how to cope with them. Sometimes it's a brutal journey that you need to take on your own, a very brutal journey. So sometimes you need to sit down, get a book, pen and paper, or get your iPad, get your whatever notebook, whatever thing you use to write your notes, get them down and write them out. What are my stressors? What are my stressors? How have I been able to cope? That's one thing that we're going to be looking at later in the week, like I said. But today is kind of introductory, talking about what is stress. We've looked today at what the various sources of stress is. I've only mentioned 3. I've mentioned physical stress, environmental stress, emotional stress. And I'll just go quickly to what Glam has written here as well. Thank you very much, Glam. I'm enjoying your contribution to this. Instead of worrying over a misfortune, Find a solution. Absolutely. The harm is already done, and worrying would not solve anything. It would only keep you depressed. So you know what? When those three sources of stress that I mentioned, when they do come up. So for example, one of them is actually physical stress, and it's about late nights, going on binge drinking, illicit drug use, lack of routine, poor diet, or illness. Some of those things are things that we've brought on ourselves. When I say we brought on ourselves, so when you consistently for 3 nights, you are out, partying, of course, by the 4th day, you're going to be stressed. And if anybody talks to you, you find yourself very quickly snapping at them. Okay? Environmental stress, poor housing. And there's just been a study that was done recently by the Chartered Institute of Housing. I can mention this actually because I'm a housing professional, I'm a lawyer, and I'm also a housing professional. And we found out that there's been, the study actually came out to have a very strong link. I think it actually said about 65% to 70% of those who are in poor housing situation, those who are homeless, those who have had major changes around their housing situation, they actually have a form of mental illness. It was a very, very shocking statistics when I read that. I didn't think it was going to be as high as 65 to 70%. So majority of those who are homeless or who have had one issue or the other around their housing situation, they can and they have experienced mental illness. So you're very right, Glam. Sometimes it's not just sitting down and thinking about what those problems are. It's about looking for the solution and also looking for the solution in the right places. So as I say, stress is standard, but some people can't wait to generate or create their own stress, and sometimes would want to transfer their stress to others, unfortunately. Well, yes, people who we think generate stress sometimes have deeper underlying issue. That's one thing I will say. So some people call people attention seekers. They say, oh, they like to look for their own trouble. They create their own drama and they want to invite other people in. I have a slightly different view. Maybe because I've worked with people and I see deeper than what a lot of people see from the outside. People who do that, people who people label as attention seekers, they actually have deeper issues going on with them. And one of the ways in which they cope to get affirmation or to feel that, that they are alive is actually by inviting people into the little drama they've created. So I see beyond the drama that has been created or that they've created. I see behind all of those activities the fact that they have a lot of other things going on the ground, a lot of other things. Okay? As it says here as well, be realistic, study yourself for yourself and know your strength and limitation. Don't try to be someone else. That's one of the ways in which you can put stress away. Or when the stress comes, it helps you to manage it. Don't try to be someone else. Don't fit into somebody else's definition of who you should be. Be you. You know what? Be you. But how do you even know who you are? One of the questions I asked somebody recently was, if I ask you, how is your body? You say, your body is fine. For those who are of faith, if I ask you, how is your spirit? You say, oh, I know whether I'm okay or spiritually, whether I'm not okay spiritually. But if I ask you, how is your mind? A lot of us cannot answer that question. We don't know the state of our mind. And that's why I'm saying we all need to go on a journey. We need to go on a journey where we know who we are. You cannot deal with what you don't know. A lot of us don't even know who we are. So take away your title. Take away the fact that you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a father, you're a sister, you're a brother, you're an aunt, you're a niece, you're a nephew. Take all of that away. Try and define who you are. Who are you? So when you go on that journey, let it be a weekend or a day or 2 or 3 days away. When you go on that journey, take a book along with you and write them down. So 2 things or 3 assignments that I've given you guys now. 1 is to write, what are your stressors? 2, how do you cope with those stress? What things have you used to devise to cope with the stress? I know Jide said earlier, he goes for a long drive, he sleeps it through. You need to understand how do you cope with it? And then 3, take a day or 2 away. It's okay for you to be alone and write down, who am I? What's my concept of me? not as defined by my children, by my husband, by my wife, by my friends. Who am I? We all need to go on that journey so that when you define who you are, it's easy for you to walk around your personality and not what other people are saying about you. Glam says again, thank you so much, AZ and Glam, for this contribution. One solution, trial, fail. Try again. That's it. Try again. You fail one, try again. Yep. And like you rightly said, and like Glam said here, she's on her second marriage. And and will free myself again if we can't come to a compromise on life issues. Well, that's true. So that's how you've been able to cope, or those are the coping mechanisms you've put in place. Okay. As I said here again, play wherever possible, sing if you can. And that's one thing I do. I love to sing. For those who watch the video that I did yesterday, I actually started by singing. I love to sing. No matter how horrible your voice is, sing. It is empowering. It frees you. Or you know what I do sometimes? I go to the open field and I scream. I scream out. I scream out. You need to know who you are, and you need to know what works for you. You need to know. Sometimes walk away. Sometimes walk away. Okay? Enjoyment is not how many parties. Thank you. It was actually one of the things that I said with Nimo before I came on air, that why are Africans? Is it because Africans are very stressed? Is it because Africans are stressed a lot that we have a lot of parties? Africans go to parties. If I was going to organize a seminar today now to talk about coping with stress, we'll probably say about 10 people. But if I was going to send an invite out and say, I'm having a party, if I send an invite out to the same number of people, I probably would see about, so if I send invite out to 100 people for party, 100 people for the seminar, I probably will see 10 turn up for the seminar and about 60 or 70 turn up for the party. Sometimes we use wrong coping mechanisms. Because somebody talked about sleeping through things. Yes, it's good. You can sleep through them. It will help you. But you know what? You come back to those issues. We need to think of practical coping mechanisms. Practical coping mechanism. Because people go to parties, you take alcohol there, or you take, for some people, they use illicit drugs. Some people use cannabis to cope. And that's the truth. Some people use psychoactive medication to cope. Psychoactive medication, they use it to cope. Psychoactive drugs. I won't call them medication per se because they're not prescribed. So people pop pills before they go to parties. The issue is the more you pop the pill, the more you need each time to cope with each circumstance. You need more, you need more, you need more. And before you know it, an addiction starts. So Sister Cynthia Gift Owusu is asking, how do we deal with someone with mental illness, but the person is in denial, is refusing treatment and refuses to take medication? What can I do to help her? I'm going to have to answer you outside of this forum, Reverend Gift. I would answer you outside of this forum. And the reason why I said that is because it's on an individual basis. I cannot give a blanket prescription of how we can work with someone who is in denial, who has no insight about their mental illness. It's very, very specific because there are lots of issues around that. And I work with people in the community as well to recognizing that it's a job that I do. So it's got to be very bespoke, very specific. So please inbox me later and let's talk about it after. Please let members read today's write-up on stress. Yes. Please, if you are not yet on Facebook, if you're not yet on our Facebook page, please ask to be added to our Facebook page. We actually have a Facebook page, the News Organization. Feel free to be added. We have two pages. One is a main page where everybody can join. We don't have much conversation. That's just information I will just post. But then we have the closed group page. In the closed group page, we talk a lot. We interact a lot. And it's closed, and there are reasons why it's closed. Okay, going back to what Neuroline, sorry, I said, completely agree with everything you said. Thanks for the great tips. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Stressors could come when we experience change. Absolutely. Midlife crisis in men. Hey, I think that's a topic on its own. I need to bring some men here who I have observed, and it's one thing I've observed, that some men go through midlife crisis, and that's a topic on its own. How do you cope when men are going through midlife crisis? They come up with a lot of things. And how do you cope with a woman who is pre-menopause and actually menopausal? How do you cope with it when they start to snap, when the energy level is low, and all the little things that it's something that we'll have to talk about later. Okay, hello, Suku. How are you? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Mental wellness is important. Absolutely. We need to talk about it. We're raising awareness about